The lawyer placed the rusted iron key on the mahogany desk. It looked heavy, ancient, like something dredged from a riverbed. Beside it lay a letter in Stephen's precise handwriting. My husband had been dead 2 weeks, but he was still giving orders. I opened it. "I bought Ironwood Ranch 4 years ago," the note read. "It is yours now, but you must promise me never go there. Sell it sight unseen." A cold, sharp betrayal pierced through my grief. He hid a property? He forbade me? I didn't ask the lawyer for advice. I picked up the key. I wasn't selling anything until I saw exactly what my husband was hiding. If you received a letter like that from someone you trusted, would you follow the order or would you go? Tell me in the comments what you would do. The GPS led me to a patch of Montana wilderness that looked less like a ranch and more like a scar on the earth. Ironwood Ranch was scrawled on a leaning wooden post, barely visible through the overgrown sagebrush. I parked the rental car and stepped out into the biting wind. I stared at the property my husband had secretly bought 4 years ago. It was a wasteland. The ground was rocky and uneven, utterly useless for farming. The only structure standing was a dilapidated barn about 100 yards back, its timber gray and warping, the roof sagging like a broken spine. This was it? This was the secret? I felt a surge of cold anger. Stephen was a systems analyst, a man of logic and precision. This purchase felt like a manic episode, a hemorrhaging of our retirement funds into a money pit. I walked toward the barn, my boots crunching on dry gravel. I was already calculating the listing price, wondering if I could even give this land away. The barn doors loomed ahead, massive, rough-hewn timber held together by rusted iron bands. There was no handle, just a single, heavy keyhole bored into the center of the wood. I pulled the antique iron key from my pocket. It felt cold and heavy in my hand, a ridiculous prop for a ridiculous situation. I slid the key into the lock. I expected resistance, the grinding of rust against metal. Instead, the key turned with the smooth, oiled precision of a bank vault. I heard a soft, pneumatic hiss, followed by the deep hum of hidden machinery. I stepped back. The rotting timber doors didn't swing outward on hinges. They split down the middle and slid apart on silent, concealed hydraulic rails. My breath caught in my throat. The rotting wood was just a facade, a shell built to deceive the eye. Inside the shell was a structure of breathtaking modernity. I stepped across the threshold, leaving the dusty wind behind. The air inside was climate-controlled, smelling of cedar and polished concrete. I was standing in a cathedral of light. Floor-to-ceiling, smart glass walls looked out over the rugged landscape, turning the desolate view into a dramatic panorama. The support beams were industrial steel, blackened and sleek. The furniture was minimalist, low-profile, and expensive. But it wasn't the luxury that made my knees weak. It was the lines. The specific angle of the cantilevered loft, the way the kitchen flowed into the living space, the use of sustainable bamboo flooring. I knew this house. 20 years ago, on a napkin in a diner in Chicago, I had sketched this. I was a young architect then, full of fire. Before I stopped designing to manage Stephen's career and raise Savannah, I had called it the sanctuary. I had told Stephen it was where I wanted to grow old. I thought he had nodded and forgotten, filing it away with all my other abandoned ambitions. He hadn't forgotten. He had taken that napkin, bought a ruin in the middle of nowhere, and spent 4 years building my dream inside a disguise. He hadn't just bought a property. He had built a fortress around my imagination. I walked to the center of the room. On a glass table, a single silver laptop sat waiting, a small green light pulsing on its lid. The house wasn't empty. It was waiting for me. I sat in the Aeron chair in front of the glass table. The laptop hummed to life before I even touched a key. A thin beam of red light scanned my face, then my retina. On the wall ahead, a massive smart screen flickered on, displaying a complex three-dimensional map of the property. Then, the screen changed. It was Stephen. He was sitting in this very room, wearing his favorite blue sweater, the one I buried him in. But here, on the screen, he wasn't the pale, exhausted man who had died in a hospital bed. He was vibrant, His eyes were sharp, alight with a fierce, terrifying intelligence. "Hello, Angela," his digital ghost said. His voice filled the room, surround sound and crystal clear. "If you are seeing this, then I am gone. And you disobeyed my letter. I knew you would. You never could resist a mystery." He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "You are probably angry. You are wondering why I bought a wasteland. You are wondering why I kept secrets." A finger tapped the digital surface in the video. The map reappeared behind him, highlighting a vein of deep purple running beneath the rocky soil. "This isn't dirt, Angela. It is lithium, the new gold. This ridge sits on top of one of the purest deposits in the state. $12 million in raw mineral rights alone." I stared at the screen, my hand covering my mouth. $12 million. He hadn't bought a farm. He had bought a bank vault. "But wealth like this draws predators," Stephen continued. "Specifically, my brothers, Gregory, Gary, Zachary. The wolf pack. They have been tracking this deposit for years. If they knew I owned it, they would have tied us up in litigation until we were bankrupt. They would have destroyed you to get to me." He paused, looking directly into the camera lens, as if looking into my eyes. "I know what you are asking. Why didn't I tell you? Why did I let you worry about our retirement while I poured money into this hole?" He took a breath. "To truly protect someone from a war, you cannot tell them the war exists until you have built the walls. If I had told you, you would have lived in fear. You would have tried to negotiate. You would have been exposed. I had to build the fortress first. I had to make sure that by the time you found out, you were already safe inside." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sudden. It wasn't a betrayal. It was the most aggressive act of love I had ever witnessed. He hadn't trusted me with the secret. He had trusted me with the weapon. "The wolf pack is coming, Angela," Stephen said, his voice hardening. "They think you are a grieving widow in a rotting barn. They do not know about the fortress. They do not know about the lithium, and they do not know that I have given you the keys to destroy them." The screen split. On one side, Stephen's face remained frozen in a reassuring nod. On the other, a live feed appeared. Cameras, dozens of them, hidden in the fence line, the trees, the gravel road, and on the monitor labeled Gate 1, I saw 3 black SUVs pulling up to the perimeter. They were here. The exterior camera feeds showed the black SUVs grinding to a halt in the dust. The wolf pack had arrived. Gregory, Gary, and Zachary stepped out, looking exactly as I remembered them, polished, predatory, and completely out of place in the Montana dirt. They stood by the rotting fence, squinting at the dilapidated barn. They didn't see the tempered glass hidden behind the wood. They didn't see the cameras tracking their every move. They saw a ruin, and they saw an easy target. I watched from my glass sanctuary, feeling a strange detachment. Through the high-definition audio feed, their voices filtered into the room, crisp and clear. "He actually bought it," Zachary sneered, kicking a loose stone. "Look at this dump. He burned the family trust for this? Doesn't matter what it looks like." Gregory said, his voice smooth and dangerous. "It matters what's underneath. We get the deed signed today, before she realizes what she's sitting on." "And if she fights?" Gary asked. "She won't," Gregory replied. "She's a grieving widow who thinks her husband was a fool. We tell her we're here to save her from his bad investment. We play the concerned family. We buy her out for pennies, and by next week, we have the drilling permits." They walked toward the barn doors, confident, arrogant. They started banging on the outer wood, their fists thudding against the false exterior. "Angela!" Gregory shouted, his voice dripping with faux concern. "Angela, open up! It's family. We know you're in there. We're here to help you." I sat perfectly still. The irony was suffocating. They were calling out to a helpless woman who didn't exist anymore. The woman inside the fortress was the architect of their ruin, watching them on a 4K screen, drinking espresso. "She's not answering," Gary muttered. "She's scared." Gregory said, "Good. Fear makes people sign things. I looked at the control panel on the desk. With a single keystroke, I could lock down the perimeter, call the authorities, or simply ignore them. But Stephen's plan required engagement. I had to let them in. But then, the feed changed. A fourth car pulled up behind the SUVs. A modest sedan. My heart stopped. The back door opened, and two men in suits dragged a young woman out. She looked disheveled, terrified. Savannah, my daughter. They had my daughter. Forget the nice approach, Gregory said to the others, spotting Savannah being manhandled toward the barn. We have the leverage now. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. They hadn't just come for the land. They had come for my child. The game had just changed. The fortress wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a hunting blind. I pressed the intercom button. My voice boomed out of hidden speakers, echoing off the canyon walls with the authority of a deity. Let her go. Outside, Gregory looked up, searching for the source of the sound. He smiled, a shark sensing blood in the water. He didn't let go of Savannah. Instead, he pulled a thick manila envelope from his jacket pocket and held it up to the security camera. We need to talk. Angela, he said, his voice smooth and amplified through my desk speakers. About assets and liabilities. He tossed the envelope onto the dirt in front of Savannah. Tell your mother what's in there, Savannah. Savannah was shaking. She looked at the camera lens, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was them. They said they were a consolidation firm. Tell her, Gregory barked. It's my student loans, Savannah whispered, her voice cracking. And the credit cards. The business loan for the startup that failed. It's $200,000. Gregory stepped closer to the lens. We bought the debt, Angela. A distressed asset purchase. We own the note. We own her financial life. He leaned in, his eyes cold and dead. Here is the deal. You open those doors and sign the deed to this wasteland over to us, and we forgive the debt. Savannah walks away free. But if you keep playing games in your little bunker, we default her. Today, we garnish her wages for the rest of her life. She will never own a home. She will never get a car. We will bury her so deep in litigation she'll need a snorkel to breathe. My hand hovered over the door release. The lithium didn't matter. The fortress didn't matter. Stephen's war didn't matter. That was my baby out there. They had found the one weakness in the armor. They were holding a knife to her future, and they wouldn't hesitate to cut. I looked at Savannah. She looked so small, defeated by a system she didn't understand. I couldn't let them destroy her. I reached for the manual override. I was going to surrender. I was going to give them the $12 million to save my daughter. But just as my finger touched the release, the massive smart screen flashed red. A new window popped up, overriding the camera feed. It was a file labeled with a single blinking command. Protocol, Trojan horse. And beneath it, a text message from Stephen, time-stamped 6 months ago. Angela, if they have Savannah, do not open the door. Open the file. I froze. My hand trembled over the controls. Stephen had predicted this. He had anticipated the exact leverage they would use. I pulled my hand back from the door release. I grabbed the mouse and clicked the file. The screen flooded with data, bank transfers, shell companies, acquisition dates. I read the summary, and the air rushed back into my lungs. The panic vanished, replaced by a cold, hard realization. I looked at the monitor showing Gregory's smug face. He thought he was holding a royal flush. He had no idea he was holding a handful of ash. I sat back in the chair. I didn't open the door. I turned on the microphone. Gregory, I said, my voice steady. You might want to check the paperwork. I hit the manual release. The hydraulic seals hissed, and the massive timber doors slid open with a heavy, expensive thud. The wolf pack stumbled in, dragging Savannah with them. They were expecting a dirt floor and cobwebs. Instead, they walked into a multi-million-dollar command center bathed in soft, recessed lighting. They froze. Zachary actually dropped his hand from Savannah's arm. They stared up at the steel beams, the smart glass, the sheer, undeniable wealth of the architecture. For a second, they looked like children who had wandered into a reactor core. "Welcome to the ruin," I said. I didn't stand up. I swiveled my chair to face them. My hands folded on the glass desk. Gregory recovered first. His eyes darted around the room, calculating the value, reassessing the prey. He shoved Savannah forward. She stumbled, falling onto the bamboo floor. "Get up," I said to her, my voice gentle but firm. "Come stand behind me." Savannah scrambled over, hiding behind my chair, shaking. Gregory walked to the desk. He slammed the manila envelope down on the glass. "Nice clubhouse, Angela. Must have cost a fortune. Which makes it even sadder that you're going to lose it all." He tapped the envelope. "The debt, 200,000, plus interest, plus penalties. We own the paper, sign the deed, and we rip this up, refuse, and we destroy her credit before she even starts her life." He pulled a pen from his pocket and rolled it across the table. It spun and stopped perfectly in front of me. "Sign," he said. I looked at the pen. "Stephen warned me about you," I said. "He said you were predictable. He said you would look for the weakest link and squeeze." "Stephen is dead," Gregory spat, "and he left you with a mess. Sign the damn paper. You bought this debt from a holding company called North Star Financial, didn't you?" I asked. Gregory blinked. "What does it matter?" "It matters," I said, "because you didn't do your due diligence." I typed a command into the console. "Execute Trojan horse." The screen shifted. A complex web of corporate filings appeared. 6 months ago, Stephen tracked down every cent of Savannah's debt. I said, reading from the data my husband had compiled from the grave. Student loans, credit cards, that predatory business loan. He consolidated it. I pointed to the screen. He created a shell company, North Star Financial. He bought the debt himself. The blood drained from Gregory's face. 2 weeks ago, I continued, North Star Financial sold a bundle of distressed assets to your investment firm. You thought you were buying leverage. You thought you were buying Savannah's future. I clicked the final file. A document appeared. It was a certificate of discharge, dated 3 days before Stephen died. But you bought a ghost, Gregory. Stephen forgave the debt the moment he bought it. The paper you're holding? It's worthless. It's a receipt for a balance of 0. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the servers. Savannah let out a small, choked sob of relief behind me. Gregory snatched the envelope back, ripping it open, frantically scanning the pages. He was looking for a loophole, a signature, anything. But his hands were shaking. "You scammed us," Gary whispered, staring at the screen. "He sold us nothing. He sold you your own greed," I corrected. "He knew you'd come for her. He made sure you paid him for the privilege of finding out you have no power here." I stood up. I loomed over the desk, over the brothers, over their petty, small-minded cruelty. "You don't own my daughter," I said. "You don't own this land, and you are trespassing in my fortress." I watched the realization shatter them. Gregory crumpled the worthless debt papers in his fist, his face a mask of pure, impotent rage. Gary looked at the floor, defeated. Zachary just stared at the screen, mouth open, as if seeing a car crash in slow motion. "Get out," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. "You think this is over?" Gregory hissed, trying to summon one last shred of menace. "We have investors. We have contracts. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, "because I know your secret, too." I typed one final command. Project, Glass House. The screen cleared, replaced by a cascade of financial documents. Not mine, theirs. "Stephen was thorough," I said, my voice cold. "He didn't just investigate the land. He investigated the buyers. He found the creative accounting in your firm. Gregory, the leveraged loans you took out against assets you don't own. The Ponzi scheme you're running to pay off the interest." I pointed to a particularly damning balance sheet projected on the glass wall. "You aren't wealthy businessmen. You are drowning. You needed this lithium mine to pay off your creditors before they realized the vault was empty. This isn't an investment for you. It's a life raft. And I just popped it. The architecture of greed. That's what Stephen had called it in his notes. The illusion of the empty wallet. They looked powerful, but it was all smoke and mirrors. Their entire empire was built on the perception of wealth, not the reality of it. If you leave now, I said, I keep these files private. You can fight your creditors on your own time. But if you take one step toward my daughter, or file one single lawsuit against this property, I send this entire folder to the SEC and the IRS. Today, the fight went out of them instantly. It was like watching air leave a balloon. They weren't predators anymore. They were just desperate, broke men in expensive suits. Gregory looked at the screen, then at me. He saw the end of his world in my eyes. He turned without a word and walked out. The others followed, stumbling into the daylight like vampires caught in the sun. I watched on the monitors as they got into their SUVs and sped away, dust billowing behind them. They were gone. The silence that followed was profound. The hum of the servers seemed to soften. Savannah let out a long, shuddering breath. She walked over to me, her eyes wide, still processing the shift in reality. "Mom," she whispered, You destroyed them." "No," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I just turned on the lights." The dust settled over Ironwood Ranch. The wind died down, leaving the air still and clear. I stood with Savannah in the center of the fortress. We were safe. The debt was gone. The lithium rights were secured in a trust Stephen had set up, designed to protect the land from strip mining while providing for us for generations. I looked at the smart screen one last time. Stephen's frozen image looked back at me. He had been my husband, my partner, my protector. But he had given me something more valuable than safety. He had given me the tools to save myself. "Thank you," I whispered. I typed "end session." The screen went dark. The hum of the servers faded to a quiet standby mode. Savannah looked around the room, taking in the beauty, the strength, the sheer love built into every beam and bolt. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now," I said. "We live." I walked over to the drafting table in the corner. I picked up a pencil. For the first time in 20 years, my hand didn't shake. I wasn't just a widow. I wasn't just a mother. I was an architect. "Family isn't DNA," I said, looking at my daughter. "It isn't the people who share your blood but would bleed you dry. Family is the people who prepare you for the storm. It's the people who build the fortress before you even know you need it." I looked out the window at the vast, open Montana sky. "I choose you, Savannah, and I choose him. That is our family." I looked down at the paper. I started to sketch. A new wing for the house. A studio. A future. If you've ever had to build your own fortress to protect your peace, share this story. And tell me in the comments, what does family really mean to you?